Bismillahi'r-rahmani'r-rahim. Now, what is the relationship between Islam and art? I believe the best point to start is to recite this prophetic tradition. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, God is beautiful and loves beauty. Now, this search for beauty and aesthetics is evident in his own example. We see that he constantly sought for beauty in life. He wanted to beautify his own self, inner and outer. He also wanted to beautify his own physical appearance, his own home. The cleanliness was part of his message, because cleanliness means beauty. He also wanted to beautify his own city. We know that he launched forced plantation campaigns in Madinah. He proclaimed some areas as sanctuaries in which there was no permission to cut a tree or to kill an animal. He wanted to keep it as beautiful. Also, he wanted to beautify his own environment. Beauty, that search for beauty, his use of comb, his use of perfume, these are all manifestations of that search for beauty in life. Now, why this is important? Because art is a search for beauty. Because wherever you see beauty, you see traces of the divine. As Plato said once, the beauty is the splendor of the truth. The beauty means the truth. You see the truth wherever you see the beauty. And this is what art does. Now, to be able to appreciate what Islamic art does, and the real beauty, the authentic beauty of Islamic art, however, one needs to know the language that Islamic art speaks. Yes, it speaks a language, and every traditional art form actually speaks a language, and one needs to know that language. And also one needs to know the most basic concerns and teachings of that religion. Now, in the case of Islam, Islamic art speaks a different language, and one needs to know that language. Let me give you an example. Calligraphy and, say, recitation of the Quran are, say, some of the most central forms of art. Aside from architecture, but calligraphy is one of the most central forms of art in Islam. Why this is the case? Let me try to explain. In Christianity, the highest expression of truth is Jesus. Now God becomes a man, and this man is the highest expression of truth. So Christian art focuses on, centralizes that man, that God-man, in his art form. So icons, icon making, depiction of Christ are the central art form in Christianity. But in Islam, things change. In Islam, the highest expression of truth is the Quran. And the Quran in Islamic art wants to look at that object, which is the Quran. And how do you do that? Calligraphy is a form of doing that. You write the Quranic verses slowly, beautifully. There as if you wanna assimilate the message of that book. And this is how it works. Calligraphy is a silent and continuing reflection and contemplation on the Word of God. Because in Islam, the word becomes a book, and art wants to clothe that book, wants to contemplate on that book. And calligraphy is one of the best ways of doing that. Similarly, recitation of the Quran is one of the most central parts of Islamic art. And another thing, let me try to give you another perspective to master that language that Islamic art speaks. La ilaha illallah, Tawheed, is the most central teaching of Islam. Now, how is that reflected in Islamic art? Let me try to explain. If you enter a Buddhist temple or a Christian church, you will see a figure at the center, say a Buddha statue or an icon of a Christ, right? In a Buddhist temple or a Hindu temple, you'll see a similar thing happening. There is going to be something at the center which will define the space. It could be a Buddha statue, or it could be an icon. But that will define the space. But in a mosque, and this is really, really important to understand the tendencies of Islamic art. In a mosque, there is nothing. There is this empty space. There is this void. Why is this the case? Because La ilaha illallah, to say La ilaha illallah, is to say that God is transcendent and immanent at once. And there is no intermediaries between God and the world, and God and man. There is no intermediary. So rejection of this intermediary, also rejection of any object which can stand between you and God. So Islamic art leaves that space empty as a void. Because negation of the world at the same time is the affirmation of the presence of, the infinite presence of God. So understanding that, the concept of emptiness, that void, is crucially important. That becomes the symbol actually, not an icon, but that emptiness, that void, becomes the symbol of God's transcendence, simultaneous transcendence and immanence. Transcendent in the sense that God is beyond everything we can imagine, and immanent in the sense that God is closer to us than our own jugular vein, as the Quran puts it. So that emptiness embraces that idea. But that's not the whole story. There's something else going on as well. When you enter a mosque, you will also see other art forms, calligraphy, geometry, arabesque art forms, abstracted life forms, framing that emptiness. Yes, it is an emptiness, but it's not that abstract. Otherwise, it wouldn't be accessible to everybody. So Islamic art frames that emptiness with calligraphy, with abstracted life forms, with geometry. And no art form is as geometrical as Islamic art. Now, why this is the case, let me try to explain that one. This floral, abstracted life forms, like flowing on these tiles, they are representing this feminine, this beautiful aspect of the world. But there's also this geometry in the world. Now, the world is an oscillation between that geometry and this flexibility. Geometry stands for the laws that are governing the world. The world is a reflection of God's majesty, and there are laws in this world. And on the other hand, there is this there's this openness. There's not only laws, but there's also freedom. There's also flexibility in the world. So that life forms represent that flexibility, that feminine, that beautiful aspect of the world. And geometry represents that majestic, that rigorous aspect of the world. And the world is an oscillation between this majesty and this beauty. God is the creator of a mother's heart. God is also creator of these natural laws. Now, that is giving you a total worldview. So I said several things. Now, that emptiness is really important to understand. And knowing the highest expression of truth is the Quran is really important to understand Islamic art. And also, the concerns behind these symbols, these geometrical forms, these, floral abstracted life forms in mosques is also very, very important. Another thing that you will see in a mosque, when you enter into a mosque, you put your forehead to the ground. This is actually a sanctification of the world, this nature. You put yourself, you in attachment with the ground. You put your forehead to the ground. This is to say that the world is not a demonized place. It's actually a sacred space. Everywhere in the world is sacred. And this, use of ground in the mosque architecture is another expression of this intrinsic peace between world and man. That's another aspect of the Islamic art, that one of the messages that Islamic art gives. And from another perspective, the use of light, for example, in a mosque. There are many verses that talks about light, and one of the names of God is light, according to Islamic tradition. And this embracing light, this opening of, this use of, windows without colors, as if you want to absorb that divine light. Again, there is no intermediation between that light. There's no colors, but you want to assimilate light as it is in itself, without any distraction, without any veiling or filtration. That's another aspect of Islamic art that's quite striking. And from another perspective, Islamic art, one can say, while looking at these things, Islamic art is a manifestation, is an expression of the most central teaching, that is La ilaha illallah. Also, I said how Islamic art reflects the Islamic worldview, the majestic and beautiful names of God, and how Islamic art is an expression of Muslim worldview. I believe we can say that Islamic art is a silent theology, is a silent metaphysics. One can see the same thing in Islamic music and Islamic, miniatures. This is always the case. It's always good to know the most central concerns of this religion in order to appreciate the beauty that Muslim artists produce. Also want to add this. We need Islamic art more than ever. Because in art forms, you are being immediately striking. Right? It's the beauty of a soul immediately strikes you when you see an art form. There's no mediation. When you see a beautiful art form, for example, when you see Taj Mahal, there you will see the beauty of Muslim soul. When you see Blue Mosque, there you will see the beauty of Muslim soul. When you see a Sulu's calligraphy form, there you will see the beauty of Muslim soul. When you hear a Qawwali song, there you will see the beauty of Muslim soul. And art can transcend these boundaries which we construct, especially nowadays, where in which Islam being demonized and being misrepresented in media. I believe art can be a way to punch holes in those walls that separates us. So we need art. We need Islamic art more than ever. Yes, we can replicate, by the way, traditional art forms, calligraphy, miniature, and architecture. We can replicate them, but also I believe we need to use modern art forms. Again, by starting from our own worldview, we need to use these modern art forms to express ourselves. So Islamic art is a must, and we cannot do without it, especially nowadays, to convey the beauty of this religion and the beauty of Muslim soul to larger audience.